Notre Dame, they're very consistent and disciplined. So, those are two things that you have to make a deep run and to give yourself a chance to win a national title. And I don't think that Texas has been that under Coach Sarkisian ever since he took over. Welcome into My Take Is. Go ahead and subscribe. It's free. We're going to do a giveaway when we get to 1,000 subscribers, so make sure you're subscribed and ready to go for that. College football delivers every single Saturday. It started at noon today. I was expecting to be locked in on Notre Dame and Pitt. I wasn't, because Notre Dame just beat the absolute snot out of Pitt for the entirety of that football game. Look, Notre Dame's going to finish 10-2. They're going to make the playoff, and we'll kind of see how they perform from there. But that's a really good football team. As much as I hate to admit it, I am capable, by the way, of putting my Notre Dame bias aside and admitting that that's a really, really good team that they have up in South Bend. And they showed it again today. It's been on full display really all season, and they're really well coached. They get better. That's what happened last year. They had that early loss to Northern Illinois, and they just got better every week from that point forward. This year, they open up losing to A&M and Miami, and they just continue to get better every single week, and they've got the best running back in college football this year. It's a really, really good team who's going to be a really tough matchup for whoever gets them in the first round of the college football playoff. But the real game at noon that held my attention, South Carolina and Texas A&M. South Carolina goes into halftime up 30-31. Or excuse me, up 30-3. The final score was 31-3. And I'm sitting at home just kind of in awe, because I said this last week. Records obviously tell the story of your season, but not entirely. They don't tell you how talented a team is. And last week, people were giving Indiana a pretty hard time because they went on the road to Penn State and played a really good football team on that specific Saturday, even though Penn State's record would tell you that they're not very good. But the reality of it is, when you look up and down that Penn State roster, there's a lot of guys that are going to play in the NFL. And when you play teams that are talented and have NFL-level players, and you catch them on a Saturday where everything is kind of rolling together, then you're going to be in for a dogfight. South Carolina was preseason ranked inside the top 15, if I remember correctly. It's a team who just narrowly missed out on the college football playoff last year. They bring back a guy in Lenore Sellers who's going to be a first-round pick as a quarterback. That is going to happen. Okay, he's too talented, and he had a great first half. He was awesome in that first half. Nick Harbor catches a lot of crap, but that dude's gonna be a day 2 draft pick. That guy is a second or third round pick in the NFL just because of the size and the speed and everything. You saw it on full display. He has that play where he catches like a 10-yard curl, makes one guy miss, and then he was gone. He just left all these other Division I football players in the dust. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball. South Carolina's got some guys on defense that are going to have a shot to play in the NFL. It's a very talented team. Or I don't know about very talented, but they're talented enough to challenge teams when all the talent is clicking. And for a half, it all clicked. That and Marcel Reed was just awful in that first half. The first half of Marcel Reed is what concerns me about Texas A&M against some of these other top teams in college football, because I just like the other quarterbacks more than I like Marcel Reed. I'll go through him here in a moment. But for a half, South Carolina showed why people were high on them coming into the season. And then the second half happened, and Lenore Sellers, it felt like he didn't complete a pass. They couldn't run the football. Meanwhile, A&M is just deep balls over the top. They're sacking Lenore Sellers. It's just an ugly, ugly second half for South Carolina. And Texas A&M showed why they're ranked number 3 in the country. Because they're also wildly talented. And when they play to their peak level, it's a really good football team. Better than Ohio State? Probably not. Better than Indiana? I don't know. It'd be a heck of a ball game if those two teams played. But when they play to their peak, you saw what they did in the second half. So I wouldn't call this a good win for A&M because South Carolina is 3-7. But I found it impressive to be down by 27 points, to come out in the second half and dominate the way that A&M did. I mean, they erased that 27-point lead in like 16 minutes. I mean, it was incredible. Just the speed with which they came back at the start of the second half. So that part of it was impressive. The first half from Texas A&M was not. And again, when I look at the best quarterbacks in college, or at the best teams in college football, I like Marcel Reed less than like all of the other quarterbacks. Like, I don't like him as much as I like Julian Sayin or Fernando Mendoza or Ty Simpson, even though he had a rough day. Gunnar Stockton, not as talented, but that dude is just the definition of consistent, the way that he's played so far this year. Trinidad Chambliss, I take him before I took Marcel Reed. Dante Moore at Oregon, I take him before Marcel Reed. What's his name at Texas Tech? Morton, I would take him before I took Marcel Reed. The young kid, C.J. Carr at Notre Dame, I take him before I took Marcel Reed. John Mateer at Oklahoma, I take him before I took. I'm not gonna go through like the entire top 25 list. Well, but you get the point. There were a lot of quarterbacks that I would take before I decided to take Marcel Reed as my starting quarterback, and you saw why in that first half. The guy's super athletic, can extend plays, just not consistently accurate enough for me, and can when he's pressured a lot, he can make some questionable decisions. So that's my one concern with A&M. But you can say, Jonathan, did you see the second half? And I would have to concede that point because the dude was awesome in the second half. Completely turned it around and was incredibly impressive. So big picture, Marcel Reed concerns me. The second half today, though, to his credit, was just nothing short of spectacular. 3:30, there were two really good games on, and USC beats Iowa. Let's start here. I am an SEC guy, so I just want to make sure that I'm giving the Big Ten the love that it deserves. I really liked watching USC play football this year. It's been really cool to see how Lincoln Riley has changed this roster during his time there. They waltz into the Big Ten as a Pac-12 football team. Small, not super physical, air it out, score 50 points in a game, stop absolutely nobody. And that has changed. They won an ugly football game today. 26-21, it's raining, and they found a way to win. And they did it with their defense, holding Iowa to only 21 points. Okay? They did it with their defense, and they did it with their ability to run the football. This is a much more physical team than they were 2 years ago when Lincoln Riley was getting things started there in Southern California. And today, they won because King Miller, who's a stud, by the way, averaged about 4.5 yards a carry, and Jaden Mayava is a better quarterback than Mark Gronowski. That's right. So while the passing and the quarterback play and the offense was the difference in the game, USC just feels significantly more physical this year compared to previous years, while still having that, Lincoln Riley identity of we are going to throw the football a bunch and we're going to be successful when we do it. But they were split 50-50 today, essentially, on run and pass. They threw it 32 times and they ran it 31 times. And that just wasn't the case when Lincoln Riley first, was coaching USC when they were in the Big Ten. They are much more physical than they were. The defense still isn't very good. They have a real chance to make the playoff now with this win. This is a good win against Iowa, even though they're 6-4. That's still a really good, tough football team that plays everybody close. But now, I'm pretty sure they go to Oregon, and if they win that game, they're getting in because they're not going to lose to UCLA. I guess they could lose to UCLA, but I'd be very surprised if that were to happen. So, they've got everything in front of them. Go beat Oregon, and congrats, Lincoln Riley. You're going to take USC to the college football playoff this season, and enough won't be able to be said about how he has changed the identity of this football team over the last couple of years. It's been really impressive to see him kind of change that. The other big 3:30 game, Oklahoma, they beat Alabama, and, we play the games for a reason, and we play the games to see what's going to happen. And Alabama continued to not be able to run the football very well. Oklahoma's offense continues to struggle outside of John Mateer just kind of finding a way on a couple possessions every game, and that usually is how Oklahoma scores points. And the difference today was turnovers. Ty Simpson throws a pick six. He loses a fumble. Ryan Williams, he loses a fumble. Could have lost another one. Daniel Hill, he fumbled, but, Alabama was just fortunate to actually recover that one. So that was the difference in the game. Alabama turned it over 3 times, and Oklahoma didn't. When you have two good teams playing each other, and Oklahoma's a good football team, so is Alabama, the team that doesn't turn over 3 times is probably going to win, even if neither team can run the football, even if Alabama gains twice as many yards on the game as Oklahoma does, because that's essentially what they did. They outgained them 406 to 212. When they weren't turning the football over, Alabama, I thought, looked like the better team. But those 3 plays cost them. And, to counter what I just said, good football teams don't turn the ball over like that. And this has kind of been the issue with Kalen DeBoer. When they lose games, it's for reasons like this. Where there's just these mental lapses, because that's what turnovers are. Not holding onto the football with 2 hands and you fumble it, or not holding it high and tight, or holding it in the wrong hand when you're running down the sideline, a quarterback making a bad read. It seems like these are the things that are just total lack of juice whenever they play unranked teams. It seems like one of those 2 things tend to be the reasons why they lose games under Coach DeBoer. And that just doesn't fly at Alabama, because for years, Nick Saban's teams never seem to lose for those reasons. If you beat Alabama, it's not because they beat themselves. It's because you were just better than they were. And this is, the second time this year where Alabama just beat themselves. They lost to Florida State because they simply didn't show up ready to play. And they lost today because they turned it over 3 times. And you can't do that if you want to win a national title. Now, it's only their second loss of the year. I believe that was their 11th game of the season. Let me think. What are they now? No, they're 8-2. So they have 2 games left. I think they still got, the one cupcake on their schedule. Yeah, they got Eastern Illinois, and then they go on the road to Auburn for the Iron Bowl. And the Iron Bowl is always crazy. Even though Auburn's terrible this year, that game is going to be nuts. So they should still find a way to make the playoff, but you go from having a bye to maybe having to go on the road now. Now, if they win out, then I believe that they'll be playing in the SEC championship game, and if you win that, then you'll probably host a home playoff game, but you'd still rather have the bye, and Alabama just pissed that away today. Last game of the night, Georgia just throttles Texas, which is not super surprising, because Texas, while they're ranked 10th, Kirk Herbstreit was trying to kind of make a case for them to still maybe make the playoff with 3 losses. They'd have to beat Texas A&M to do that, and they're not going to do that. Just telling you right now, that's just not going to happen. And I said yesterday in the video that I made kind of previewing all these games that the difference would be quarterback play. And while that was part of the difference, Gunnar Stockton was just better than Arch Manning was today. That wasn't the only thing. You had the surprise onside kick from Georgia, right, where they're up, they're up by 18 or whatever, and then they recover the onside. Cash Jones, such a great name. He recovers it, and then they score, and it's they're up 28-10 now. This game's over. And so that obviously played a huge role in it, right? But here's the thing. Here's why Texas lost. And here's why Texas hasn't beaten Georgia since they came to the SEC, which, to be fair, they haven't been in the SEC very long. Georgia under Kirby Smart is always incredibly disciplined. Georgia doesn't beat themselves. It never happens. They don't commit penalties. They don't really turn the football over. And they don't drop passes very often. Texas today, early, like they had, I think it was their second drive of the game. Arch Manning, he completes like a 39-yard pass, and they pick up a first down. He completes it while he's standing in his own end zone. And then his next 3 passes hit 3 different receivers in the hands, and all 3 were dropped. Now, Arch Manning wasn't very good, but his receivers dropped too many passes. Texas committed too many penalties. At one point, they had committed 9 penalties. Georgia had only committed 1. And Arch Manning just wasn't as consistent as Gunnar Stockton, even factoring in the drops. And when your quarterback isn't as good, you shoot yourself in the foot with penalties and drops. You're not going to beat Georgia on the road. It's just not going to happen. Even though Georgia isn't, this isn't, the Georgia teams that won national titles. Like they're not that good, right? Like they're obviously good. They're not as good as those teams that won national titles. I don't think that they rushed the passer well enough, even though I thought their pass rush today was better. Part of that is this Texas offensive line just hasn't been very good. They had 3 sacks on the day. With that being said, kind of feels like Georgia's peaking here at the right time. We'll see if that's actually the case or not. They still get to play Georgia Tech. That game's going to be awesome. That game's going to have some real juice to it for the first time in quite some time. But they kind of feel like they're figuring things out a little bit. Gunnar Stockton is not as talented as a lot of these other quarterbacks in college football. But I know what I'm getting from him every week. He's going to be incredibly consistent. He's going to complete every pass that he should. He's going to run the football a little bit and use his legs to extend some drives. And even though Georgia's pass rush isn't as good as it used to be, or as some of the teams of the past, you can't run the football on these guys. Texas averaged 1.4 yards per carry today. It's not very good. I say, part of that is the sack yardage. So let's look at the carries here. Ryan Wingo had 2 carries for 0 yards. C.J. Baxter had 1 carry for 3 yards. And Quintravion Wisner had 9 carries for 37 yards. So that's 40 yards on 12 carries. That's less than 4 yards a carry. That's pretty stout run defense from the Bulldogs. So I kind of like Georgia. Like I said, I think that they kind of continue to trend up. Gunnar Stockton has gotten better throughout the course of the season. So maybe they're the best team in the SEC. It's probably A&M, and the recency bias of seeing how they struggled in that first half today is sitting in my head probably a little bit too heavy. But I really like this Georgia team. They're disciplined, and they're consistent. And in college football, those are 2 things that you don't always get. And I think the team that normally wins the national title, it is a team that is usually very consistent and very disciplined. Like Ohio State, I think, checks both of those boxes. I think Indiana checks both of those boxes, except for 6 of their last 8 quarters didn't play up to their normal standard. Only up 10-7 going into the half against Wisconsin today. A rough 4 quarters against Penn State. A&M, with the exception of the first half today, I think they've been pretty consistent and disciplined. I think Georgia kind of falls in that bubble as well. Going back to Alabama, they don't. They're up and down. They've kind of been inconsistent ever since, Coach DeBoer took over. Texas Tech, I think, has been consistent, not as tough of a conference. Notre Dame, they're very consistent and disciplined. So, those are 2 things that you have to make a deep run and to give yourself a chance to win a national title. And I don't think that Texas has been that under Coach Sarkisian ever since he took over. And that is something that they're going to have to fix, for the rest of his tenure if they want to eventually reach the mountaintop and win a college football playoff. Because when you get to the final 4 teams, definitely, your talent level, unless you're Ohio State, it's not going to greatly exceed your competition. And you have to be disciplined and consistent in order to win those games. And to Georgia's credit this year, and Indiana's and Ohio State's, all three of them check that box, or check those two boxes, absolutely. So those are the three teams that I really like right now. A&M is probably the fourth. And those are going to be your top 4 ranked teams come Tuesday night. So that's going to do it for the video. Again, subscribe. We're going to do some sort of giveaway once we reach 1,000 subscribers. Make sure you're subscribed so you can enter that. And I will talk to you tomorrow, talking more NFL, because we got a great NFL slate tomorrow. Once again, please subscribe.